What if your safest haven, the place you built to protect everything you worked for, was actually the very target that marked you for death? David Stringbean Akeman didn't trust banks, so he hid his fortune in a place he thought no one would ever look. But in 1973, that decision turned his Nashville cabin into a death trap. The most chilling part? As the killers took his life, they were standing just inches away from the $20,000 they were looking for, a treasure that wouldn't be found for another 23 years. This is a story of tragedy, dark coincidence, and a massive historical irony that still echoes through the hills of Tennessee. To understand how a beloved country music star ended up dead on his own porch, we must look closely at his final performance and the hidden paranoia that governed his everyday choices. David Akeman was a 6'2" banjo player with a goofy signature look, a long nightshirt tucked into short blue jeans belted around his knees. He was a staple of the Grand Ole Opry and a beloved cast member of Hee Haw. But beneath his grins lay a deep-seated anxiety born from the Great Depression. David simply did not trust financial institutions. Believing any bank could vanish overnight, he carried enormous wads of cash inside a custom zippered pocket sewn directly into his denim overalls. He was earning thousands of dollars a week, but lived like a broke Depression-era musician. In the trusting community of 1970s Nashville, David would openly flash these thick stacks of bills, unaware that this display of wealth painted a massive target on his back. It was an era when country stars lived modestly with no gates or security. David and his wife Estelle lived in a rustic cabin on Baker Road in Goodlettsville, Tennessee, with no security whatsoever, trusting their neighbors implicitly. But ask yourself this: if you knew a famous television star was walking around with thousands in cash and keeping his fortune in an unlocked cabin, how long before temptation turned deadly? Write down your theory in the comments right now. On the cold night of November 10, 1973, that temptation turned fatal. Two 23-year-old cousins, John A. Brown and Marvin Douglas Brown, decided to get rich quick. They'd heard rumors that Stringbean kept a legendary hoard of cash hidden inside his rural home. The cousins drove up the winding path to the isolated cabin, knowing it would be empty because Stringbean was scheduled to perform at the Grand Ole Opry that night. But the sheer audacity of what these intruders did next is enough to make your stomach churn. While David Akeman was on stage at the Ryman Auditorium, warming the hearts of thousands of fans, the Brown cousins were sitting in his dark living room, listening to his performance live on his own radio. They used the broadcast to track his movements, waiting for the announcer to introduce his final song so they would know when to expect him home. They ransacked the house, tearing down curtains and overturning furniture, desperate to find the rumored treasure. But they found absolutely nothing. Frustrated and fueled by drugs, they made a chilling decision. They wouldn't run. Instead, they would wait in the darkness for David and his wife Estelle to return and force him to reveal the location of the money at gunpoint. At around 11 o'clock that evening, the headlights of David's Cadillac swept across the dark gravel driveway. But as the couple pulled up, David's instincts flared. He had a homemade security system, a simple piece of fishing line stretched across the driveway. It worked. David saw the line was snapped. Sensing danger, he grabbed his .22 rifle from the car and stepped out to investigate. He walked up to the porch, leaving Estelle by the car. The moment he crossed the threshold, the darkness exploded with gunfire. John Brown jumped from the shadows and shot David 3 times in the chest. David collapsed, dying almost instantly. Outside, Estelle heard the gunshots and screamed. She turned and ran toward the road, desperate to escape. But Marvin Douglas Brown pursued her. He caught up to her in the yard, just 40 yards from the front door. Despite her begging for her life, he cold-bloodedly shot her in the back of the head. If you were in the killer's shoes, with 2 bodies on the ground and the sirens of your own panic ringing in your ears, what would you do next? Tell me in the comments, would you have stripped the bodies for cash or simply fled into the night? The Brown cousins panicked. They ran back inside the house, frantically searching the rooms one last time, but the sheer terror of what they'd just done clouded their minds. In their haste to escape, They grabbed a few guns, a chainsaw, and a measly $250 they found in David's pocket. They jumped into the couple's station wagon and sped away into the dark, leaving behind a scene of absolute horror. But the ultimate irony of this frantic search is that the killers had stood right on top of the very fortune they were willing to kill for, entirely blind to its presence. But the tragedy didn't end with the murders. The real mystery was just beginning. Where was the massive fortune everyone in Nashville whispered about, and how could it have vanished? The next morning, country music legend Grandpa Jones, David's neighbor and closest friend, arrived at the cabin for a planned hunting trip. Instead of a cheerful greeting, Grandpa Jones walked into a silent nightmare. He found David dead on the porch and Estelle's body cold in the grass. This discovery shattered the country music community. Before this night, Nashville was a place where artists left their doors unlocked and greeted strangers like family. Overnight, that innocence evaporated. Heavy security, locked gates, and loaded guns became the new normal for every star in Tennessee. The police launched a massive manhunt, eventually arresting the Brown cousins. Both were convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 99 years in prison. Yet, even as they were locked away, the question of the missing money haunted the hills. The investigation uncovered a mind-blowing piece of evidence that made the murders even more tragic. While the killers had ransacked the home and fled with a measly $250, they had completely missed thousands of dollars in cash that was physically on the victims' bodies. Investigators later found that David and Estelle had thousands of dollars sewn into special zippered pockets inside their clothing. The killers had been so blinded by panic and greed that they walked right past a fortune, leaving the money untouched on the bodies of the people they had just murdered. But the real prize, the primary hoard of cash that had driven the Brown cousins to commit this heinous crime, remained completely missing. Imagine renting a historic cabin, sitting by the fireplace on a cold winter evening, and noticing something bizarre sticking out from between the bricks. Would you pull at it, or would you leave the past buried? In 1996, 23 years after the brutal murders, a new tenant was living in the old Akeman cabin. While cleaning around the massive stone fireplace, he noticed tiny, unrecognizable scraps of paper wedged behind a loose brick in the chimney breast. Intrigued, he pried the brick loose. Behind it lay a deep, hollow cavity. When he reached inside, he pulled out bundles of aged, dusty bills. It was the missing $20,000, the exact fortune the Brown cousins had destroyed 2 lives to find. But the final cruel twist of this story is that the money was entirely useless. Over more than 2 decades, mice and insects had nested in the chimney, chewing the paper bills into a shredded, decayed pulp. The fortune David Akeman had died to protect had been eaten away by time and rodents, left to rot in the very walls of his home. In trying to keep his hard-earned money safe from a system he didn't trust, David Akeman inadvertently created the perfect trap for himself and his wife. His distrust of banks cost him his life, while the very treasure he hid was left to decompose in the dark. It stands as one of the most tragic and ironic cautionary tales in music history. If you found yourself holding a fortune that could cost you everything, where would you hide it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to dive deeper into the dark secrets and forgotten mysteries of history's most fascinating figures, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss our next investigation.